exhausted.
Talk about what a walk it is to get to this room.
Exactly.
Yes. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello.
Is that on?
Should be.
1-1. Is that happening?
All right, Kale.
Switch on.
Oh.
One.
All right, we got it. We're good.
Just
There we
one,
go.
two, turn it off.
Yes. That's one to switch. All right.
Icicle. Test.
Test. 1, 2, 3. 3, 2, 1. We're good. All right. So, Mr. Bradley,
Yes.
I'd like to open this up. Last time I talked to you, we spoke
We
about.
sat on the sofa somewhere. Where
We
was
did
it?
at Atlanta.
Atlanta.
Yes.
Yes. I thought I recognized
The
it.
sofa was comfy, wasn't it?
It was.
I was like, how come we don't have a couch?
No, I'm leaving. Sorry.
I'll send that portion of the video to the managers, like, we need a couch, Doug left.
And where's the horse?
Oh, that comes with someone who's not here.
Oh.
Like that belongs to somebody who
Oh.
works, but he's not in this con.
Because it used to be in this hotel.
Yeah, well, the horse traveled, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Always patted the horse for good luck.
Who knows the horse? It's like a steel horse, yes? Who knows the horse's name?
Oh, not me.
Bofa. B-O-F-A. That's the horse's name.
Bofa.
Bofa. Yeah, so last time we talked, I asked you about your acting journey and how that all began for you. But this time I want to jump right on into Hellraiser talk. And I would love to know about the Hellraiser makeup that you had to wear at the application. How many pieces was it? All the good stuff about that. Because it's such a beautiful piece.
Sure. Well, it was a 6-piece application initially. So the process started with the application of a bald cap.
Okay.
I see you looking at the top of my head.
Yes.
Wondering why I needed a bald cap.
I also didn't know you back then.
Well, this was
Oh.
this was 1987.
Right, exactly.
1986, in fact. And I had hair.
Right.
Quite a lot of it.
Really?
So the bald cap is basically to cover the hair. So it's like a latex bathing cap, and that gets glued, in around there and holds all the hair in place. And then there's 6 pieces under Jeff Portas's careful tutelage, who had designed the makeup, working with Clive, and had constructed it. He applied it with his assistant Roy. So 6-piece application. So it was, I'm not sure I can remember now. It was kind of neck and up onto the top of the head, and then there was a piece that came down to the eyes. There was a nose and cheek piece, down ears and the rest of it. So those all get glued into place. The nails for the first 2 movies were metal, not real, but it was like there was a thin metal base on the inside of the latex with a very small pin fitting through it, and then the body of the nail was like a thin stair rod almost, but hollow in the middle. So that then sat over that little base pin thing, glued in place with super glue, with the head of a nail on top of it. So that was quite an elaborate thing. But so they were always kind of in the latex. So the base was in the latex, and then everything else got put in place. Everyone, children especially, are always curious about how I got the nails in my head, yeah, did it hurt? So no,
It's like, yes, a lot.
well, I get, sometimes late on a Saturday afternoon, when I've been answering the same questions over and over again, and there's a mischievous imp in me that kicks in sometimes. My wife kicks me under the table because she says, British irony, Americans don't get it,
Is she American?
She is, yes.
Okay.
So it's you know, it's a thing about irony. What I notice when Americans say something ironic, they always say, "I'm just kidding." Now, if you do that, you're no longer being ironic.
Right.
It ruins the whole thing. But sometimes people will say to me, "Well, what did you have to do in the audition to get the role of Pinhead? What was the audition like?" Now, the truth is there was no audition, because people who know any of my backstory know that Clive Barker and I were at the same high school in Liverpool. We met working on the school play together somewhere around about 1969, and then I had spent over 10 years working in the theatre with Clive. We had our own theatre company. Clive doing most of the writing. He was acting early on, and then he stopped to concentrate on directing and writing, and I was like the main actor in the company. So the truth is, he just asked me. That's it. There was no audition. He said, "Do you want to do this?" And I said, "Yes."
Yes.
That was it. But I've occasionally said to people, well, they put me in a room just with a camera and a table, and on the table there was a pile of nails and a hammer, and they told me to get creative. And you'd be amazed how many times people go, "Oh, they believe you. They think that's what happened." So I have to say, no, hold on. That's just kidding.
All right, do we have any audience questions in the moment? Yes, sir.
Pinhead is very famously like an intellectual, contemplative villain. And in the interviews I've seen with you, and even right here today, you seem to share that characteristic. The intellectual part, not the villain part.
How little you know me.
That's right. So how much of you went into that, or what are the challenges of playing an intellectual villain? And do you enjoy playing an intellectual villain as opposed to some other kind of villain?
Wow, that's a lot of bits going on in that question, I think. The intellectual villain element of it is Clive. And people who are familiar with Clive's writing know that Clive is never going to be satisfied with just a villain. That's boring. And it's generally true, I think. In the same way that the only interesting heroes are flawed heroes. They're just, if a hero is just heroic all the time, they're kind of dull. You know, I think it's a bit of a difference between Superman and Batman, for example, for me. Ultimately, I found Superman a little bit dull, because he's just, he's great, he's Superman. No arguing with that, but he's just heroic all the time. So, okay, but Batman is, Batman's fucked up. So, you do what? Why do you dress up as a Batman? What's that about? What's going on? I mean, that's being explored now in the movies. It's weird. Therefore, it's interesting. And if a villain is just a villain, as a villain, as a villain, as a villain, again, they're boring. Give them a sense of humor. Give them a sense of playfulness. Then they become interesting, I think. I don't know about me being intellectual. I guess I'll take it. But so that element goes in, but all the cues are taken from the screenplay. And the first thing that I noticed really with the screenplay was, again, people who are familiar with Clive's work know that his style is naturally a high style, poetic style. And I was very familiar with that, because I've been very up close to all of Clive's writing up to the point of Hellraiser. I was very conscious that he was writing down in kind of movie-ese in the screenplay. And then Pinhead turns up and everything changes. And to me it felt like Clive had gone, oh, thank God, I can let the handbrake off and I can go now. So the nature of Pinhead's language is markedly different from the way that anybody else in the screenplay is speaking. So that stands out. And you know, I'll go to irony again. And the first line I really got a hold of and kind of underlined in my script, and I wrote next to it, gag, exclamation mark, which was a note to me to say, this is supposed to be funny. And I should be making people laugh, but it should be uneasy laughter. And that line was, no tears please, it's a waste of good suffering. And I thought, I'm not doing that right if people don't find it funny, but they kind of, at the same time, should be thinking, okay. So that element is built in. As an actor, it's great to have that kind of stuff to play with. I've always said that, you know, Pinhead's he's a monster in a horror film. Shorthand, we could talk about that because he isn't really, but you know, who wouldn't be at a loss if he found himself at a garden party with Noel Coward and Oscar Wilde, you know, and Groucho Marx? He'd be able to hold his own with them quite happily, you know. And somewhere they're all on the same page, I think. But at the end of the day, there's hooks and chains and a degree of soul ripping that, you know, you're not going to escape from. So we can enjoy all the pleasantries, but, you know, at the end of it, you're toast, generally speaking. So the rest of it, I don't know. I mean, it's, you know, I don't know how all that happens. All the normal questions you would ask yourself as an actor don't apply. You know, what car does my character drive? Where does he bank? Does he prefer baseball over American football, or both equally? Or, you know, or is he not into sports at all? Or does he read? You know, none of these questions apply to Pinhead. And as far as I was aware, there was nowhere I could go to watch Cenobites at work, you know. I hope not, anyway. So all you can do is read the screenplay and talk to Clive, who literally drank the character up. And the rest is your imagination. And you know, they say we put part of ourselves into every part we play, and we take a little bit of every character we play. God help me, away with us. But otherwise, I don't know. I don't know. You stand on your marks, somebody says action, and you flick a switch in your head and hope for the best. That's all I can say, really.
Yes, young man.
What's your favorite kill? What's your favorite kill?
What's your favorite kill?
Well, you know, here's the thing about Pinhead. He doesn't do a lot of killing, or he didn't early on. In Hellraiser, who does he kill? Frank? Yeah. That's it. In the first movie. Am I missing something?
Julia?
Julia does the killing.
Yeah.
I don't kill Julia. But I didn't kill her, did I?
Didn't Frank take her?
Yeah, I expected.
Yes. And she gets resurrected.
Right.
Who do I kill in Hellbound? I don't think I kill anyone in
No.
Hellbound, do I? Not sure that I do.
What's
Hellraiser 3, I wiped out an entire nightclub. I'll take that. Kane Hodder likes to play this game with me, because Kane Hodder keeps account of his kills.
Yes.
Strange man. And he liked to tease me, that Pinhead was a bit of a wimp because he doesn't really kill many people. And I would just said to him, how many people could you fit in an average nightclub on a Saturday night? 300? 500? Gone in a heartbeat. Match that, Jason.
Well, we interviewed Kane yesterday.
Yeah.
And he changed his word, and he's like, unless it was like all at once.
Ah.
He did. He started to, so I now I
I got under his skin.
that came from you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. It goes back in a way to what I was saying before, which was my shorthand in my own head approaching Hellraiser was because I was a fan of horror movies as a teenager. Before I knew I was going to be an actor, I'm going to play the monster in a horror film. How cool is that? But he isn't really. He's an impartial judge. He's an umpire. The monsters in the movie, again, this is quintessential Clive Barker. Nightbreed is exactly the same idea. In Nightbreed, the breed are not the monsters. The humans are the monsters. The breed want to be left alone to be freaks. End of story. But, of course, that's not going to work. And in Hellraiser, Frank and Julia are the monsters. It's Julia who's, as I said, it's Julia who's out trawling the bars, bringing businessmen home and beating their brains out with a hammer to feed their blood to Frank.
Yeah. We covered Hellraiser on our podcast, The Dolls of Horror, just a couple of weeks ago. We talked a lot about Julia and her character progression.
Yes.
And what a wonderful artist Claire Higgins is.
Brilliant performance.
Right, brilliant. And everything
I
about...
screen tested in her dressing room for the screen test, and I looked her in the eyes, and I thought, you don't need to screen test this girl. She's there.
Yeah.
She's in the moment, and
Yeah.
she was. Brilliant performance.
Right, yeah.
She's a very, very, very talented actress.
Right. And our guest on that episode was my friend from back in my theater days about 23 years ago, Alex, and he had said that, this was very interesting, his take on it. Every time he watches this movie, he feels something different. Like new emotions come up, and he's been watching it since it came out,
Right.
Alex also used to compete in Leatherman conventions. He was Mr. Long Beach Leather, and so we titled the episode, "Who's your leather daddy?" Because of your costume.
I'm your leather.
Exactly. So there's that. All right, I saw a question over here. Yes.
Hellraiser having stemmed from the Hellbound Heart, and you having been close with Clive, is there any other Clive short stories or books that really resonate with you that you would consider favorites of yours?
Yes, but it's been done, unfortunately. The other character that I really, really wanted to play was Harry D'Amour. But Scott Bakula got that gig. Yeah. I can't remember the Shadwell, I think, in Weave World. Was very much a favourite as well. I'll settle for old Penny.
Anybody else?
So, when did you personally kind of take it in that you were a horror icon, and how do you feel about it today?
It doesn't make any sense to me because I know who horror icons are. As I said, I was a fan of horror movies. I know
Like
who
the
the
Universal Monsters?
Sure, I know that the iconic figures, or my icons, are Lon Chaney Sr., and Boris Karloff, and Peter Cushing. I'll take those three. If I have to take three, it will be those three. And Peter Cushing is my god amongst horror movie actors. And he's one of the best actors who ever drew breath, in my opinion, even outside the genre as well. Even before I got to know him in the Hammer movies, he played Sherlock Holmes for the BBC in the 1960s. He was my first Sherlock Holmes. He was winning awards in the 1950s, in particular for a live television broadcast of a dramatization of George Orwell's 1984. And for me, what marks Cushing is that ability to play that white hot, pure intensity that he brings to Van Helsing in the Dracula movies for Hammer. And then he switches to playing Baron Frankenstein in Hammer's Frankenstein series, which is the only series of Frankenstein movies in which the Baron, Cushing is so brilliant, the Baron becomes the focus, not the creature. And those run, I've said, I think that run of Hammer Frankenstein movies, Peter Cushing's performance, which gets more and more amoral, and I stress the word amoral as opposed to immoral, as the series goes on, is the greatest essay in evil put on screen. Brilliant actor. To put me in the same bracket as those people, to me, is ridiculous and ludicrous and nonsense. But it keeps happening, and I accept, I have to accept that, I made my mark indelibly in the history of horror movies. And it's a humbling honor for me to know that that is the case. It is the case. So I have to accept it. I don't generally wake up in the morning and think, hey, I'm a horror icon. I get up and go about my business. It's for other people to decide. But enough people have now told me that it is the case that I have to eventually accept.
That's a fact.
It seems to be, yeah.
For this generation, for my generation, but also like for the new ones, right?
Well, there's a new generation, younger and younger,
Yeah.
finding the movie all the time, and the thing seems to be as fresh as a daisy.
It is. It holds up.
To new people finding it. I'm always eager when I know people have just seen the movie for the first time to ask them, how it was, and the response is always enthusiastic. And nobody's ever said to me yet, well, yeah, for a movie made in the 1980s, I guess it's okay.
It's okay for the 80s.
But it doesn't, apart from, shoulder pads and Claire's hair that puts us firmly in the late 1980s, the movie hasn't aged.
Right.
And the Cenobites never will.
Right.
I've always said you could show an image of the Cenobites to a 14th century monk, and he'd know exactly what he was looking at. And if it looks increasingly unlikely, but if any of us are still around in 400 years' time, those images will remain as strong and as powerful as ever. And that's the genius of what Clive did in Hellraiser to me, was he takes what was the kind of de rigueur format at the time, which is a slasher movie. You take the Cenobites out of that story and it still works as a straightforward, slightly dull, but perfectly serviceable contemporary slasher movie. Because everything else is still in place. Frank and Julia and Larry and
Why she's
Kirsty
killing.
and bringing Frank back to life, which has nothing to do with the Cenobites. You know, he find another reason why he's dead under the floorboards, and Larry bleeds and brings him back to life, and everything else follows from there. And what Clive then does is he comes and he drops pure Gothic horror bomb into the middle of that contemporary slasher movie, which is the Cenobites, and everything changes.
What was it like playing Elliot in Part 3, out of makeup, and doing the character before he turned into
First
lead Cenobite?
Hellbound,
Yeah,
and then
you really got to flush it out.
in Hell, absolutely right. Well, you know, that again, that's an opportunity that is not going to come along very often, if at all, in an actor's career. It was great. I loved the challenge, and especially, you know, the weird challenge of playing opposite myself.
Yeah.
I especially liked sitting down in the makeup chair, you know, bit of powder, bit of this.
Right.
And after 3 minutes, 5 minutes,
Yeah.
they say, yeah, you're good, you can go. What? I don't have to sit here for the next 4 hours? Oh, great. So, yeah.
And they get to wear different clothes.
Yes, nice dapper military uniform, but it was a strange moment because when we were approaching filming that, we were filming both sides of the scene in the same night. So somebody had to double me as Pinhead. We were doing me as Elliot first, and then halfway through the night, I went into makeup and we did the same scene with the reverse. So there had been a very long line of people trying to convince the first AD and the director that they should be the person playing, doubling me as Pinhead. You know, people who were a foot taller than me and a foot shorter than me, and a deal wider than me and a deal narrower than me. In the end, it was, unsurprisingly, it was the guy who was my stand-in,
Right.
who got the gig. But I'd been to makeup very briefly, very nice, gone to wardrobe, got my military uniform on, which is very nice, makes you feel very good. And I walked onto set and there's Pinhead. I'd never had that moment. I'd never seen Pinhead disembodied, as it were, or, you know, without me in.
You got to see him from other people's.
He was just standing there looking at me, and it was a very weird moment, and I didn't like it. And it was at that point I realised how possessive of the part I'd got. You know,
Yeah.
that's, you know, get out of there. That's not for you to play with. That's mine. Yes.
Nice. My toy, right?
Yeah.
Any more audience questions? Yeah.
Kind of going along with what you had just said, you had been Pinhead for so long and did such a great job at it. I'm assuming you've watched the movies. If you have, what is your idea? What's your take on the route Hellraiser has taken with the new Pinhead and how they're writing it now, as opposed to what you created in your vision when you first started out?
A lot of time had gone by, is the first thing. I mean, we shot Debtor and Hellworld, which were the 7th and 8th movies, back to back. I think 2000. I'm trying to remember now. No, 2002. I think maybe. We shot. It gets harder to remember all these things in chronology. Inferno was 99 and Hellseeker was, I think, 2002. So 8 years had gone by, and I was contacted about Revelation. I was uncertain about it to begin with because, you know, it's a matter of record that the only reason Revelation got made was that someone at Dimension Films had noticed that if they didn't get a movie made by a certain date, they were going to lose the rights to the franchise. And I was being contacted in the middle of July for a movie that had to be in front of the cameras on September the 3rd. They weren't spending any money on it. Everything was happening in a terrible rush. It didn't seem to me like, a serious attempt to revitalize the franchise and move it forward. And I was not being offered very much money, but I've said before, if working in the dog company with Clive in the theatre company taught me anything, it is that money is a very bad reason to say no to things. It's a very good reason for saying yes to things you probably don't want to do. And so for that reason, I did say that I wanted to see the screenplay. I read the screenplay and made my decision, and I turned it down. Having read the screenplay, I didn't expect Revelation to be very good. I didn't expect it to be quite as bad as it was, I have to say, in all honesty. I haven't seen Judgment. Again, I was approached about Judgment. Negotiations broke down, and so I passed on it. And I've met Paul Taylor, who followed me as Pinhead. That's all cool, and I haven't seen the movie to date, not because I'm trying to avoid it, I simply haven't got around to it.
I'm sure it's bad to say, but it's a horror. You're not missing much.
Okay, well, that was it. And now we have the remake, finally, which has been threatened for forever and a day. And as far as I'm aware, it's done. And they've gone a very interesting route with it, which is they have cast Jamie Clayton, who is a transgender actress, to play Pinhead. I think that's a perfectly valid way to go. No reason not to. I do like to point out that I did wear a skirt. Somebody at my table this weekend, and we were discussing this. I want to own this line because I think I'm going to, make it a .com for myself. He said, yeah, badass in a skirt. So I think badassinskirt.com. I think I may have to own that. But it's a casting call. It's no more than that. I know Jamie's work from, there was a science fiction series on Netflix several years ago called Sense8, which I really liked. I'm disappointed it didn't go to a second season. She was in that, and I liked her work in that very much. I haven't seen stuff that she's done more recently. It's a casting call. It's no casting decision. It's no more than that. And okay, female Pinhead. Well, what does that mean? What is female? There are a million shades of femininity.
That means it's be way more ruthless.
Well, we'll see. I met the guy who played Chapter, who's like 6'9". So, we'll see what happens. But I think that's coming out on Hulu, I guess, for Halloween. But it is done. They offered me a cameo in it to play the guy who, the selling the box, what's your pleasure moment. But I've already done that. I played that role in Hellseeker. It was a decent, again, it wasn't about money because the offer was decent, and I thought about it and I just thought, no, I don't think that feels right. You're going to start over and move on, start over and move on. So I thanked them for offering it me and wished everybody well and declined. We'll see what happens.
But no hard feelings. Everyone wants to start a fight. You're not mad at it. You're not mad at it, like no hard feelings. You're like,
No,
it's good.
not at all.
It's good, right?
Not at
Yeah.
all.
Like everyone always wants to start a fight, like how do you feel about it? Like aren't you mad? No.
No.
Right.
What's the point?
Right.
What's the point? It's beyond my control anyway. And obviously, if they want to cast a female Pinhead, that kind of takes me out of the equation. So that's end of discussion.
Right.
The point is, anybody can do whatever they like. I mean, we'll see how well this works. Will they do a sequel to the remake and so forth? Fine. Hellraiser doesn't go away. It's all still there, and that's fine. So all the movies stand.
Was it fun playing Pinhead?
Was it fun playing Pinhead?
Yes, but you can kind of hear an asterisk of qualification along the back of it. Look, all movies are hard work, and all movies come with their difficulties, and all movies have their moments when you hate everybody. And there were moments, very often at the end of the day, when my tired, haggard, horrible face would emerge out of this beautiful makeup, where I did have my moments where I'd be staring at myself, thinking, why me? Why me? There are 1,000 actors who give their right arm to be sitting where I am right now. Why me? And on the subsequent movies, on day one, everything's great because I love being on a movie set, and so I'm there again, it's going around saying hi to everybody and all of that, and then there comes the moment, where the makeup artist is coughing behind you and saying, Doug, we really need to get started, on the makeup. Those would be the moments when I'd have to go to the bathroom, or I'd have an urgent phone call to make, or somebody I really needed to speak to. And I realized I was actually trying to delay the moment in my head. And then there were times on day one, I'd walk into the makeup trailer, and there would be that face, the makeup sitting on a dummy head, staring at me, with the instruments of torture all laid out, and the smell of the paint, and the smell of the glue. Okay, here we go. Once I got day one out of the way, then it's fine. We're playing in the sandpit. Acting is dressing up. Acting is make-believe. Acting is let's pretend, right? You do that when you're playing with your friends in the street, or when you're in school, or dressing up for Halloween. It's what we do. We mess around in the sandpit. We pretend to be people we're not. And in the case of Pinhead, I pretend to be somebody who never existed, without a name. And it's a privilege, and it is a lot of fun. Yes. It should be. Otherwise, you should, find another job.
We have time for one more.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
What is the, I have two more questions. So, what is the most fun you've had on, which Hellraiser entry you've had the most fun on? And also, is that you playing Pinhead in the USA Up All Night commercials from back in the day with Gilbert Gottfried and Ron Shear?
Yes. I played the pizza delivery guy. I did a few of those things.
Yeah.
Slightly reluctantly. But it was all publicity. It was all publicity, particularly for the third film, I think, the fourth film. I did a lot of stuff. I did Spring Break for MTV in Panama City. It was like a talent costume. And the failures were sent over to me. I had a big fake cauldron that I was supposed to be staring and putting people in. I'm standing there on the stage looking at all this and looking at an endless sea of thongs down the beach both ways. There are worse things to be looking at, God knows.
You did a promo of David Spade, right?
Thinking to myself, what the hell am I doing here? David Spade. Now, and that was a cool moment. That was the MTV Video Awards, when they used to do the thing where celebrities weren't on the list and they couldn't get in, and David Spade had the list. And that year, the people who couldn't get into the MTV Video Awards were Roseanne, Andrew Dice Clay, Pinhead, and Ringo. And so I rolled up, already in makeup and costume. We'd done that in the hotel, and then I got into a limo. That's fun, because we left my room in the hotel. We got into the elevator to go down to the ground floor. Halfway down, the elevator doors open, and here's a regular businessman with his attaché case waiting to get into the elevator. The elevator doors open, and he finds himself face to face with Pinhead. And I didn't say a word, I just stared at him. He just went. I waited for the elevator doors to close, you know. And I always imagine him going home at the end of the day, you know, to his family, saying, "Hey kids, guess who I met in the elevator?" And there was a game I used to play in the limo when I was traveling in makeup and costume, which was coming up to a stoplight and being aware that another car would come up and stop alongside me, and then I could just let the window down and wait for them to make eye contact with me, you know, and then zzz, back up. And if I timed it right, then the light would change and we'd be away and they'd be back. But we arrived, and you know, I should backstory this by saying that I was born in Liverpool, and I was like 7, 8, just becoming aware that this thing called pop music existed when Love Me Do hit the charts. And my city was about to become the epicenter of this whole thing. I am one of the world's biggest Beatles fan from day one forward, and still am. They're still the greatest band of all time. So it was at UCLA, and I got out of the limo. PA girls, you know, came over and said, "We're delighted to have you here. We'll just bring you over to the stadium area." Eric Clapton and Elton John are rehearsing right now. And Ringo's here. And I walked down and I turned, and Ringo was talking to 2 guys and had his back to me. And one of the guys said something, and Ringo turned around and he looked at me and he said, "Hey, it's Pinhead." And my legs had completely gone to jail. Completely gone to jail. And fans sometimes at my table at these conventions, you know, they will say to me, "I'm sorry, I'm babbling, because I can't cope with the fact that I'm talking to you." I reference that moment because, believe me, I babbled insanely and inanely to Ringo, who was, you know, great about. And I'm sure I said lots of extremely embarrassing things like, "I'm from Liverpool too." And with the very greatest respect to Mr. Starkey, that was just Ringo. You know, if I had been in front of Paul, or God forbid, John, if it had been Lennon, I would have run away. I don't think I could have coped. I don't think I could have coped. I couldn't have said a word to him other than "thank you." But there was lots of those. I mean, I was on Arsenio.
Yeah.
You're trying to get rid of me now. I'm sorry.
But
Someone else.
if we didn't get to your questions, please go to his table. How long are you here for today? Good.
Yeah.
Dan? All right, he's here for the rest of the day, guys. So go see him.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate you.